What's up, everybody? Welcome to another Monday edition of the Surf and Sales podcast. I'm your co-host, Scott Leese, along with my good friend, Richard Harris. And we're brought to you today by our good friends and sponsors, Gong, Vidyard, Find'em, Perception Predict, and Lead 411. Check out those companies. They have great products that help you and your sales organization. And we're joined by Sara Beam, founder of Virago Ventures in the Los Angeles area. I'm not exactly sure what part of LA you're in, Sara, but welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, now tell us what Virago means and why is it the inspiration for your company's name?
Okay, so it means heroine or warlike woman. So, I kind of just really like that embodiment when it comes to just women in sales and women in business. And then ventures is just kind of like a, unknown path or territory, just kind of like exciting thing. So those two things was just kind of what I was going for.
I like it.
A year ago when I started it.
Now, how does a woman from Kentucky end up running her own CRM business in LA? Tell us about your journey a little bit.
Okay, so I moved to LA about 5 years ago. When I moved here, my husband is a comedian and he wanted to either move to LA or New York, and I was done with the cold. I was like, no, I'm not doing New York. So we were like, let's just move to LA. So we came here to visit. I wanted to visit first just to make sure I would like it. So we came to visit, and then we set a goal for a year from then to live here. So we just quit our jobs, sold a bunch of our stuff, and saved a bunch of money, and then just moved out here. So when I came out here, I started working for an e-liquids company. So it was a startup, very small. They had been around for like a year or two when I started. So I went from a call center environment, which was super, super structured and corporate, to a startup environment with a bunch of 28, 30-year-olds, so it was like the polar opposite, and it was really intense for a while. So I had to get used to this just kind of new environment of kind of wearing a bunch of different hats. So I was their first outbound salesperson, so I kind of helped and created a lot of the sales processes. So creating the scripts, email scripts, call scripts, setting goals, things like that. And when I started, they had a CRM in place. It was Salesforce IQ. So I don't know if you're familiar with Salesforce IQ, but it's now Salesforce Essentials. So it was their kind of smaller, it used to be Relate IQ, and then Salesforce took it over.
The starter
pack. It's like their starter pack. So when I started this system, I had never encountered a CRM before. I never used one. Working for a call center, we had those systems in place, but I didn't really know that's what, I know what a CRM was. But when I started, it was a very unorganized system. So there was leads that were also accounts, and I would call on it. I would call leads thinking they were leads, but they were actually accounts, because I was just doing the outbound. I wasn't doing any of the account management. So there was a lot of confusion. It was kind of messy. So I kind of just took it upon myself to, improve things. And I switched them from Sales IQ into Zoho. So if you know me, or if you follow me on anything, I like Zoho as a company. So that's one of the reasons why I think I like them so much, is I found them so long ago. It was 5 years ago when I first encountered them, and I switched the company over to Zoho. But I ended up becoming this company's director of sales. So I started as their outbound sales rep, and then within 2 years, I worked up to the director of sales position.
While also basically doing sales operations.
Yeah.
So and just glossed over the part and made it seem so easy that you're like a sales rep, and then you built out all this operational stuff and switched. This is not easy. This is also not a normal path. So there must have been something about how busted all of that was that attracted you to spend so much time and energy in that area. Because on the flip side, I saw all these things busted, and I'm like, I ain't doing that. I gotta find somebody to help me fix that.
Yeah, so I kind of think the call center is a big reason why process is just always been so ingrained in me as a salesperson, because as you know, being in sales, there's a lot you can't control, right? So you can't control who's going to answer the phone or who's going to answer your email or do any of this. And I hated that aspect of sales. I hated not having like any type of control over the outcome. So the process for me gave me that kind of control. So that's why I really enjoy CRM system as a salesperson, because it gives me that type of, kind of control in this world of chaos, right? So I can like know, when was the last time I talked to this person? Did they open my email? When did they open that email? When did they click on it? I can have all these little insights that help me get to that end result. So I think having so much, being in a call center for like 4 years, that was really where I learned a lot of my foundational sales techniques, right? Like how to overcome objections and how to build rapport, the basic things I learned there. And I think having that and then bringing it into this world of kind of chaos, it was scary at first, but it was a benefit. Like I hated that structure of the corporate world, and I hated the call center at times, but now I'm super grateful for it, because I wouldn't have the knowledge or that type of drive. But yeah, I don't know. I wanted to fix the process, because I figured if you fix the process, then it's just going to be better along the way. So you keep putting band-aids over things, that's not going to like ever get better. And eventually your salespeople are just going to get frustrated. They're just going to like, leave. So yeah.
How do you, and I think I see this a lot, and I 100% agree on building a process, trusting the process. The bigger the organization, the more people want to touch it, right? How do you prevent, I call it field creep, right? Where all of a sudden, sales reps are now required to get all this data for some report that really doesn't matter to them. How do you encourage a company to understand where that boundary is?
So, and you mean that's like when entering the data into the CRM, right?
It could be data, but it could also be the notes from the call. It could be, all those things. If you're not careful, it could take 60 clicks to update a single opportunity record.
Yeah. And I think, so that question, there's a lot of different pieces that play into it. So one is, making sure that the security settings and the permissions that role or profile has isn't too much, right? So you don't necessarily want sales reps being able to create new fields or like adding different things. Like I like creating like pick list fields, for example, rather than having let's say, for example, I'll see some CRMs will come standard with an industry field, and it won't be a pick list with a bunch of options. They'll be able to type something in. So sales rep number 1 will type in finance, and then sales rep number 2 will type in finance services. So then you have the same thing, but you have 2 different things. So when you filter your reports, it's really difficult. So making pick list fields, so then they pick the same exact thing, make sure your data is consistent, and it makes it easier for them because they don't have to think about it. They're like, what do I need to enter here? Oh, here are my options, A, B, or C. And it's also cleaning up those options. Like, some of them might come with 55 different industries, and it's like, you don't work with all those industries. So take out the ones that your sales reps don't need to see, because that just makes them feel like there's just all this information that they don't need to enter. Same thing with the fields on the records themselves, right? So if you don't necessarily need to know the account's address because you're storing that information on the contact, take it out of the account page, so then they don't even see it and they don't feel like they have to enter that information in there. But really it's about trying to enter it in one time. But it's also like, if you enter it in correctly the first time, it should convert as it goes through the process. So like if you're entering in leads and the leads are qualified and clean, when you convert the lead into an account or a contact, then that information hopefully maps over correctly. And then it just kind of like fills it in for your rep. So your rep doesn't necessarily have to do it. So I think you can encourage, having them enter the more important things and not focus on that kind of stuff, focus on like, and then building in a sales methodology within your CRM. So it's like, if you're whenever you're following up, if you're adding a call record, make sure you add it as a call record, not a note. Those are things that you just have to lay out for your sales team and then explain it to them so they understand how to enter the information. And then they also understand how the information is being reported on, because I've had reps be like, well, I sent an email, but if you don't send it within the CRM, it might not show up on the report. So then it's like, well, I'm sorry, you have to send it within the CRM. So then it shows up on the report. It's frustrating at first, but it's just kind of like, it takes that, take the habit, I guess. And then it also takes everyone holding everyone accountable to make sure they enter it that way.
Well, that was a great answer. And that's the kind of stuff I like to hear. But I want to back all the way out of this. I want to go way back to Kentucky. And, when did you realize you liked some level of sales? Were you the person who was, had a lemonade stand or anything? Like, when did that hit you? And for those who are just listening, she's shaking her head and her eyes got like saucer big. Like,
no. Hated it in the beginning. I hated everything about it. So I graduated college, and my first job out of college was a commission only cell phone retailer. So for 8 months, I only did I would work 12 hours a day some days and not make a dime because nobody came in. This is in rural Eastern Kentucky too. Okay. So if people don't pay their bills, which it did happen, my commission would be revoked. I'd have to pay, it was insane. It wasn't a corporate direct. It was one of those retailer, third party retailer cell phone places. So I did that for 8 months and I hated it. And then I saw that a call center was coming to town and it was new. And they were accepting sales reps, and there was an hourly pay and a commission. I was all about that. But I just kind of fell into sales. I didn't like it in the beginning, especially didn't like the call center because everything was recorded. They play back your calls, dissect them, and just basically tell you everything you did wrong. This is what you could have done. Should have said this, should have done this. Oh, and then I took the job at the call center because I wanted to become a supervisor. I didn't want to be a salesperson. I wanted to be a supervisor or a manager of some sort. And I assumed, I kind of thought that if I got in early and I worked hard and approved myself, that I would get promoted early, which was what happened. I was about 8 months or so and I became a supervisor. So, and then I did that for 3 or 4 years before we moved. But that was a lot of, being the person that had to listen to calls while they were on the phone and, coaching and dissecting in real time and doing all that. So
you hated being the one evaluated, but you didn't hate evaluating.
No, I guess not.
You could have done other people.
That's right.
I guess not.
You've done us constantly through this interview.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to put it.
Well, look, I think that's more common than people might be willing to admit. I was good as a sales rep and hated it. And I figured the only way to get out of this job is to be so good at it that I never have to do it again. So
yeah,
I felt like that's kind of a similar path to what you took.
Yeah. So, but I mean, since I left there, every other job I've done has just been sales. It's just been tons of sales. Even as the sales director of a company, I was still maintaining relationships. I was still doing sales, and now running my own company. That's all it is. That's all it is. It's selling myself and then also selling people on what I'm trying to offer them. So it's still just a ton of sales.
Started this in January or February of this year, 2020?
Technically January was when I was incorporated, but I kind of started doing it around December or so. But yeah, January is when I like to say I started. So
did you have an oh shit moment when COVID hit in March where you're like, oh my God, I just started this company? As an entrepreneur, right? That's got to be super scary. I mean, it's scary enough to can I get this done by myself, or mostly by myself? Now what? You know what I mean?
Yeah. This year was there's been lots of those moments. And that's why I think being an entrepreneur is just a ton of this, right? It's a ton of up and down where you're like, this is great. And then it's no, it's down. Because I mean, when I first started the year, I was like, oh, this is just, honestly, when I first started, I wasn't really focused on CRMs at all. I was more geared towards sales enablement and just enabling your sales team with the tools and resources they needed, which a CRM was a part of that, but it
Yep.
wasn't my main focus.
You,
And then
you narrowed your
mhm.
pitch and your delivery. Yeah. You
Yeah.
were in a little tighter. Gotcha.
Yep. I started noticing, that like a CRM is something a lot of companies don't have, but they need, especially with the way things are going, right? So it's like I mean, in March, I had one client at the time, so it was like it's not good to have all your eggs in one basket. So I had one client at the time, and that client was like, "We have to put all of this on pause because we don't know what's going to happen either." So they had to put everything on pause. So then I went from like working to like not working at all. So I was like, okay, I have to use this time wisely. So I just tried to start writing blog posts, building up content, like trying to like put information out there that I thought people would want to know. So then it would just help them come to me later. And then I also started just paying attention and listening, to frustrations that people were seeing. I, started like researching more about, what people were doing with their CRMs, how they were, what were their struggles with it right now. And then I just saw there was a big opportunity there. So then I was like, let me just put a lot more focus in on, helping people implement their CRM systems and, making it work for them, because I think it really is a science and an art. I don't think it's just you can't just like say, here you go, here's a new system, run with it.
What mistakes have you been seeing repeatedly in people's CRMs? Like, what are they? And sometimes it's just, oh, I probably should, but I'm too lazy or I don't have time. Like, what are some of the big mistakes that if people took time to do, they'd be like, oh my God, thank God?
Number one, they don't customize it. So either like not fully set up or customized to your business processes. So, a lot of people just take it out the box, start using it, import their data, and just go. And then, I've had founders be like, I just want to open.
So when you say, because I got it, like I kind of customize mine, I think, but like, what do you really mean by customization?
Like, I mean, actually like going in, taking out all the fields that you don't need, and really like tracking the information that you want to really track, and making sure that it also like maps over, because that's a big thing that people don't necessarily think about. They think that, okay, if it starts off as a lead and I convert it, all that information is going to transfer over. But let's say, for example, you have a field in your leads module and you don't have it in your accounts, that information goes away when you convert it. It's going to be lost in the lead. It's just lost because it's not mapping over correctly. So that's a big piece. Is a lot of people fail is, the data isn't very clean. So their data in their CRM is messy, and that causes problems with their sales reps. So their sales reps might reach out to somebody and think they bought from them on this date when really they haven't in years, or the name is wrong, or the email is wrong. So, not setting it up and making sure it's customized to you is going to eventually lead to unclean data if you're not careful. So that's a big problem. And then bad data also leads to reporting that's not accurate. So it's like, like I was saying, let's say you want to know how many of your accounts are in Florida. If one rep puts Florida and one rep puts FL, it's going to cause you to pull up incorrect data. So I think bad data is a bit big.
I have been victimized by all of these things at one point in time or another that Sara is mentioning, Richard. I don't know if you have, since you keep impeccably clean information in your CRM. I'm less detail oriented than you.
It's interesting. I'm probably a hybrid of, Scott, what do you think I do in my CRM wrong? So I bet you know the answer.
What do you do wrong in it?
Yeah, what do you think I'm doing wrong?
You put way too much information.
Exactly. That's it.
No, you should put all.
He says no. Wait, Richard, hold on. Wait, Richard. Sara's about to tell both of us why you should do that.
Yes.
Put all your information in there. Put everything in there. Be as detailed as possible.
Oh God, I'm getting
everything.
Thinking about this.
Everything.
But
everything.
This takes forever though, and it eats up salespeople's time. No, Sara.
If you've put good processes in place to make the data entry easy for them, it doesn't have to take up a lot of time. Like it it doesn't necessarily have to take up a lot of time, because it's like, and it's going to make your life easier in the long run. You know, if you're a salesperson, you're likely juggling so many different relationships. It's difficult to remember everything, but if you take good notes, you're going to be able to look back at that on your next conversation.
So let's talk about data for a second, because we just wrote about this in the blog. How much data should an organization provide to the sales rep before they walk in the door that day, versus the sales reps having to go hunt it down?
I guess it just depends on your process, you know, and do you provide your leads for your sales reps, or do you expect your,
if you were creating the perfect process, what would that look like, Sarah?
You want to gather the information that you want to track, right? So you want your sales team, like, you know, if think of it, the way I think of it, like, is, you know, most people track information on a spreadsheet, like through columns and rows and all of that stuff. So if you're going to track it in a spreadsheet, you can track it in a CRM, just make a field for it. And then try to make that field, you know, easy to use and easy to identify. And yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to take up a lot of time. And if I think people look at entering in, you know, data into the system as like an administrative task, when really it should be looked at as a sales task, because it is helping you in the long run. So, you know, look at it like, you know, I don't know. I just look at it as like, it is, I think it is a revenue generating activity, because in the long run, it's going to help you get more sales.
It's weird. I'm like so conflicted on this topic, because when I was originally a salesperson, I never had a CRM. So we didn't use anything but our like Outlook calendar. And then I spent 16 years in sales leadership, and I want all the data to be clean and perfect so I can get insights and all this stuff. And now I work for myself, and I don't use a CRM at all. And I take terrible notes, and I'm doing like just perfectly fine over here in my head. But
in your head.
Yeah,
but
I'm a mess.
But then I was like, how are you going to grow from that though? You know, like that's the thing, is like, how are you, it's all in your head right now.
Yes. Well, if I want to grow.
To know what to forget.
If you want to grow.
If I want to grow though, right? That's one of the beautiful things about being your own boss, is like, nobody's telling you have to grow. I don't have to raise my quota. I don't have to do more. No. In theory, if I can just hold serve. Richard's over there shaking his head. He wants to kill me.
No, I like Scott. I remember last year.
This is the dichotomy of it though, right? Like, I understand now from a rep's perspective, like, this fucking sucks. I don't want to enter all this information in. I also stand from the executive perspective. No, I need all this information. It's super helpful, and I can't make decisions about the organization's future without it. So I understand the battle.
So this is like, but this is where the connection has to come in play. And this is where I think because I've seen it from both ends of the spectrum too. Like, as a sales rep, I've been annoyed with having to enter in information, but usually my frustration stemmed from the system itself being a mess, and leadership not helping us to put it where it needs to be. Like, you know, because I've worked with CEOs before who's like, look, I just want to open Salesforce. I want to see where we are, and then I want to go on with my day. It's like, well, yeah, I get that. But your team needs to understand like how to enter the information, and they need to know what you want to see. So like, it's like both have a need for it. They're just like on different pages. And if you could just like get on the same page in leadership, help your sales team understand why that information is helpful, then, you know, they'll probably be more likely to want to enter it. You know?
Yeah. So I want to come out, because, you know, you're pretty social, right? You are. I know you on Twitter. I know you on LinkedIn. Your Twitter game is fierce, right? Not just from this perspective, but a hilarity perspective. You're very funny.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. How do you, and this is separate of the CRM, but I'm curious, how do you see the branding side of building your own business, whether you work for another company or yourself? And how have you been able to integrate that into your personal life, business life, and where it overlaps?
Um, I kind of just I guess I'm just kind of myself. Most of any of my stuff on Twitter is usually just like random thoughts. Sometimes the most likes and stuff I get on a tweet is just something that I've just thought of in the moment, and then I'm like, oh wow, I can't believe that was as popular. I can't believe I got that many likes. So I'm just trying to be myself, and I want to work with people who want to work with me as myself. But so yeah, I just try to just be myself and be authentic. And but also be professional at the same time, but be honest as well. So I don't know.
This is where we struggle, Richard, because if we're totally honest, you and I are just not very professional.
Yeah, well, that's why I don't worry about it. Like, I wrote this post the other day and I started talking about the cancer of salespeople, and in fact, the cancer, what a CRM is like when CRM can be like cancer. It can spread so much negativity. And I just went off on this nasty rant, and I was like, oh, this is too dark. It's too gross.
It probably did really well.
So if someone's looking for their first CRM, right? And look, they're obvious. There's Zoho, there's One Page. I don't know if they're still around. There's Salesforce, there's Sugar. Like,
HubSpot.
How does one even go about choosing the right CRM?
I think that's where a lot of people struggle. Salesforce is probably the most well-known. So a lot of times people are like, oh, I need a new CRM. Let me just go for Salesforce. Or HubSpot's another one that people go for because they have a good free option. But that's the problem, is people don't necessarily think about everything or think about it in a long-term way, because sometimes it's like you start off with a free platform, but then you want to add more contacts and then charges come into play or different things. So there's so much that goes into it. You have to really so I recommend working with someone, like a consultant, or there's other different, agencies that help with partners of various different kinds of CRMs, and just kind of or just, go to different ones and compare the different options of what you're looking for. But, starting off and trying to find something new, just think long term. What are those long term things that you're looking for within a system? Are you going to want to integrate email or campaigns or inventory management or social, or what are the different things you're going to want to integrate into it later, and then how are those things going to play into each other down the road?
What is I've been a huge advocate for starting rev ops, sales ops, CRM work really early. For everybody out there who's in a leadership role, sales leadership role right now, or entrepreneurial role, and they really don't understand the value, or they think, well, we need to start selling stuff before I invest in operations and enablement. What are they sacrificing by doing that? Why is that, a bad mistake? I have my own reasons. I've talked about it before, but I want to know from an ops and enablement and CRM expert like you, why is it a bad idea to wait and not get started right away on it?
You're, just risking losing some of that information as you go, so I got a CRM immediately. It was the first thing I did. Of course I got a CRM immediately. That was the first thing I invested in. Yeah. It was the first thing I wanted to get. And then I started building on my processes from there. And that's another reason why I like Zoho, is they have the option of Zoho One. So I'm able to start with one platform and then build all these other ones that I want. But I'm starting this now and early, and I get annoyed with it sometimes. I even have spreadsheets where I'll keep track of stuff, and I'm like, no, I got to move this over into my system, because then if and when I grow, my team can look back and see all the stuff that I've been doing. So then I can be like, look at you can see the complete history of this of this person and this relationship. And, I can know that I started from day one with those relationships. And I like that. So I think the earlier you start keeping track of this information is just going to be more valuable as you go. Because even if you lose the relationship, you can, write down why, you can remember why, you can try to go back later and build it back up. There's just knowledge and information is just very valuable right now. So if you, keep track of your relationships, it's only going to strengthen those as you go. So the earlier you start, the better. And there's free options. So, you can start free and then grow.
I feel like she's trying to say I have no excuse, Richard.
Pretty much is, actually. So,
just do it. And like, you update your stuff as you go, you have your conversation, update it, move on. It's like you say you have all this stuff now in your head, but
I didn't say it's in my head. I think it's just not in a CRM.
So where do you put it?
Horrible places.
Okay. Because I'm like, you're putting it somewhere.
Scott?
Huh?
For the guy who wrote Addicted to the Process, what is your process? Or are you just addicted to a shitty process in this particular instance?
Well, in this particular instance, I have a process, and it involves spreadsheets, just like Sarah's talking about, and not robust notes. But I don't look. I'm in a blessed situation, as you know, Richard. Like I don't do any outbounding, right? Everything is coming to me. My sales cycle is extremely short to get a yes or a no. If it's a no, I have a list of everybody. I can follow up with them in particular months. So I'm cheating the system right now. I'm winning in a lazy man's game right now, and it won't last forever. But I've been killing myself for 20 years, and I'm doing all right now, Richard. So you're always telling me to relax. This is my version of relaxing a little bit.
You're your own most hated manager, having worked with you and known you so long. Like I think the problem is, Scott, is that at your two first startups, you never had a CRM. You had to do it this way.
Yeah.
And so it's been ingratiated into you.
100%.
This is just what you do. Like I'm not going to, and then I know that if I told you, Scott, it was only $100 a month or less to have a CRM or less, you'd be like, oh, that's not so bad. And then you go in the math, you go, wait a minute, that's like $1,200 a year. I'm not spending $1,200 a year on that. I can do it in Excel. Like this is how Scott thinks.
I'm a cheapskate. Yeah.
So,
but this is only for myself. When I'm running a sales organization, listen, I don't take a VP of sales job unless I can hire somebody like Sara as my very first hire, as you know. So I understand the value of it. In particular, if you're involved in a building and scaling a sales organization of any size, I think it's a little bit different when you're a solopreneur. Okay, so cut me a little bit of slack here, Richard.
Nope. Why would I ever do that?
No. I'm a solopreneur too, and gotta have it all in a CRM. I try to use my project management systems best I can. Yeah, but I don't know.
I think I'm right in between the two of you. I feel like I can't do it like Scott does, but I feel like if I had all the tools that Sara did, I'd spend too much time in the process and not enough time in the customer.
Well, you can get distracted by gadgets.
You can. You definitely can. You definitely can. Like, especially like when you start like putting stuff on your website and like looking at different, metrics on like what are people viewing and how long are they viewing it. Oh yeah, there's all kinds of stuff you can get distracted with.
Now, let me ask you a real practical question. If somebody wants to stand up a good Salesforce instance or whatever the tool is, Zoho or whatever, what is a reasonable expectation for a founder or a VP of sales, to have? How long does that process take? Is that a week? Is it a month?
To implement like a brand new CRM?
Like, let's say built from scratch. Let's say like Richard and I have nothing. We want to get a CRM for our, for surf and sales, right? And we're like, Sara, how long is this going to take to put in place? How complicated is it going to be to teach us how to use it? I think people truly don't know. So I'm hoping you can shed some light on that.
I think it depends. There's a lot of factors in play, but it depends on the number of users that you're adding to the system, because training is very important when you're implementing a new CRM system. So one is, how many users are you going to add to the system, and then also how much data are you bringing into the system. Those are going to be the biggest time, I would say, suckers out of the project, because once you have decided on what the right system is, then basically, like someone like me, I'm like, give me all your data, I'm going to take it, I'm going to build your system, import your data, and then I'll train your sales team on this process. So you don't even really have to kind of think about it, because the data in your spreadsheet is the data that you're going to want to track in your CRM. So I would say, depending on those few things, an implementation can take anywhere between 4 to 12 weeks or even longer. It just depends on how many people there are. If it's a small one, in a basic implementation, like let's say 5 users, few thousand records or so, that would probably be 4 to 6 weeks. But also, a lot of it depends on the company's urgency to get it done. Because, for example, I've been working with one client who has a CRM in place, and we're just working on improving it to fit their workflows. And it's taken since May, and it's November. But that's because, they're really busy on their end. So sometimes things get stalled on these types of projects, because it's much faster and easier to do your route and just stick with the spreadsheet and just enter all the stuff in the spreadsheet and keep going and keep moving, and not even do all this stuff, which that's probably the biggest piece I try to sell is, let's set you up, and then you'll be going. But it's just that implementation part is the hardest part for people because they want the system, but they don't necessarily want to have to do that work to get it to, they just want to they just want it in their, they want to just start it and it goes. And yeah, so there's a lot of factors that depends, but it could, a basic implementation, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, it just really depends on the training schedule too. Because that's really important. User adoption is very, very, very important for CRMs in order for it to be successful. Because even if you implement it beautifully, if your team doesn't use it, it's pointless.
Totally agree. So we got to sort of move to shifting, but I have a question before we ask our last question, which is, you said you guys moved to LA because your husband's a comedian. Who is your husband? What kind of comedy does he do? Let's give him a plug,
His name is Jeremy Beam. He does, comedy's kind of dead in LA right now. There's not much going on. Can't really do many open mics or anything like that. So yeah, he does cybersecurity and IT by day for a Hollywood IT company. So he works with some really fun clients, like people on TV and Netflix and stuff. So it's interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, our last question, and before we ask it, quick shout out to Vidyard and Gong and Lead 411, Perception Predict, and find them for all their support. But what can we do to help you? How can we be of service to you? Any question you want to ask, feel free.
I guess just if anyone needs any help with their CRM systems, or if you don't have one and you're looking for one, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to help. That's really what I do, is just kind of work with companies and even individuals just to evaluate their current processes and help them implement more organized and procedures with CRMs and sales processes. So if anyone needs help, I'm happy to help. So Scott, if you ever want to get a CRM in place, I'm happy to help. We could start off with the free one, because we can get it as cheap as $10 a month. I'm telling you, we can go really cheap.
The good news is I know exactly where to go if I need help. That's
so yeah, so I just want to help. So yeah.
Thanks so much. We really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun, and thanks for bringing in some insight. So people should follow you, certainly on LinkedIn, connect with you there, but definitely follow her on Twitter because she's hilarious too. So fun.
Well, thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us, Sarah.
Thank you guys. It was really fun.